How are you?
Hello, hello. I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I am sick with COVID. So that's a bit of a Christmas gift for me, but oh well, what can you do? So I've spent a few days in bed, but I'm feeling better today. So yeah, how's your week?
Yeah, not too bad. I mean, I'm also sort of recovering from a cough, so you might be able to hear my voice is a little bit, it's that time of year, isn't it? Things get colder and colds and coughs get passed around. But luckily, it also tends to be, for a lot of people, if you are lucky, a time of rest. So hopefully the two support each other in that way.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's been a big shift in weather, from being very cold to then very quickly again quite warm and wet. So, it takes a bit of a toll on a body to adjust, and definitely it affects our immune system, so it's easier to catch things.
Yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, Christmas is coming, and we are preparing for our celebrations and so on. So definitely it would be good to reflect this year on, yeah, Christmas and celebrations. And also, as we talk about celebrations, it's interesting to reflect that this can be time of sorrow and pain to many people as well. And yeah, would be interesting to kind of reflect on kind of pros and cons of this time of the year and those kind of celebrations and all the other rituals that we engage in on this kind of cyclical nature of end of the year and other more religious celebrations and so on.
Absolutely. So it's often this time of year in the winter as well when we kind of come together in the home because it's cold. Like you say, it's Christmas. It's also Hanukkah at the moment. So there's a lot of this rituals, like you say, and what rituals often do is kind of the positive effects of them is that they give us quite a sense of grounding because we repeat it on a cyclical basis. So it can give us a sense of time. So it often allows us to recognize the passing of time and change that has happened, recognize our own growth, recognize uh, kind of development that we in our relationships, in our careers, and all sorts of things like that. But what that also does is it prompts a reflection, and it prompts sometimes a reflection on, comparisons between now and this ritual or this celebration at previous points in our lives. And that's where we can notice losses as well as gains. So I think it's really important to understand this dual nature of kind of the reflective and emotional capacity for rituals. It's important to experience the kind of, or sort of to recognize what we might be going through in terms of grief and loss. Um, because it is important to engage with those emotions. It's an especially hard time to engage with them because we're seeing there's so much kind of performed joy around us, and performed and genuine connection, of course, between friends and family. But there are obviously a lot of people out there who don't have homes to go to, who don't have family to connect with, who might be also recognizing the loss of family members, friends, relationships. It's in those really significant periods of connection that we notice that absence. So I think it's very important to have a really active uh, approach to your self-care at this time of year. So the other thing that often happens around kind of festive rituals is that we might change location and we might be with different people. So you might be having family stay with you, you might be staying with family, you might be with friends in different houses and different places, you might be traveling, and all of that disrupts our own routines and our own personal daily rituals that protect our well-being. So noticing which of those you are diverging from can help
Not
you.
not even mentioning the disruption in our eating patterns, right? And what
Exactly,
we
and
do to
really,
our bodies during
absolutely.
Christmas time.
Certainly, a kind of disruption in our eating patterns, in our activity levels, and also a lot of the time increased alcohol consumption. And we're going to talk about alcohol next week, so stay tuned for that. But so there's a lot of disruption going on in our bodies, in our relationships, and our circumstances. So noticing the things that are changing and trying to minimize the disruption as much as possible, whilst still, letting go and having a good time and embracing the experience, is can really kind of help our well-being in these times of the year. Let's go on.
And definitely, it's Christmas is this kind of time of reflecting on where you are, on where we're going, and it's kind of like celebrating what we have, right? Celebrating some of those connections and reconnecting with our family, with our friends, but also kind of nurturing ourselves and nurturing some of those relationships, nurturing our own bodies. And most of the time we kind of overdo this and just overindulge in the in food and alcohol and so on, but it doesn't have to be this way, right? We can just have that reminder that we can be wise about our process of self-care and have some of those boundaries about what is it important for me right now, and what is it that my body needs, my mind needs, what are some of those needs that are not being met, and what are some of those opportunities to meet some of those needs as well.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes, like, it's especially if you're kind of with family again, and it's been a while since you've been with family, anyone is likely, and it also even happens with kind of old friends, people that you've known in your formative years. When you're spending time with them again, you'll naturally regress into those kind of older coping mechanisms and those old emotional dynamics. So just recognizing that that is likely to happen. So if you're feeling a bit more vulnerable and you don't feel like you have the same ability to attach to your usual coping mechanisms, then that's okay. And there are things that you can do to kind of try and protect against that. So recognizing the change is one of them. And the other thing is knowing what boundaries you set in your normal daily life to protect your well-being, and knowing that it's okay to still try and set those with the people that might not have experienced you setting those boundaries before. So explaining to someone that you're setting a boundary not as a form of rejection or as something critical on them, but it's that you've recognized that this boundary supports your well-being and you want to be your
Yeah,
best
and doing it as
self
a
as
way of
well.
self-care and kind of self-love and self-respect, and be kind of communicating in that way as well. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's for their benefit, friends and family benefit, and for yours as well. So hopefully that's a kind of motivation for other people to accept those boundaries. But noticing too, kind of how it can be a useful time to also notice how we've developed and how we've changed, and that's a really positive thing. The fact that we're kind of regressing, while that can be destabilizing, can also just remind us actually how far we've changed and grown and developed as adults too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there is this kind of balance that is needed in the way we are celebrating Christmas and in the way we are celebrating New Year, and kind of that gap in the middle, that it can be time of extremes, right? Like people spend some time on their own, people then go out and socialize, there are different processes that people go through, but some of these kind of highs and lows and reflections on your kind of gains and losses, and reflections on yeah, people we've maybe lost this year, and maybe it's a first Christmas without them, and all of those celebrations can really bring kind of this turmoil of feelings and emotions that can be quite conflicting, right, in many ways. So
Mm,
some of those kind of highs and lows, in a way, nearly kind of plow the ground for the new seeds to be planted, to what's next, right? What's coming next? So what
mm,
needs to go away, and what is here to stay? And it's very important to reflect on some of those when we think about traditions and rituals, and why we even celebrating Christmas, right? Why we're engaging in some of those traditions that by now people are not even reflecting on what is it exactly that we are celebrating, right? And why we are celebrating this. It just becomes the way of engaging to something that's familiar, way of reconnecting, the way of sometimes even kind of as a commercial activity, right? What we sell and the gifts that we give. But definitely we would invite you to reflect on kind of a deeper meaning behind that, and look at what the celebration really means and what it really means for me. And maybe not everyone is celebrating Christmas, not everybody is religious from kind of Christianity point of view, but the roots of the celebration go far beyond Christianity, and knowing that this is a time of connection, time of rebirth, time of kind of letting go of certain things, and having some of these even kind of superstitious beliefs of having an opportunity to connect with your loved ones that are no longer with us. And there are a lot of traditions that have been kind of traditionally kept around this year, so it would
Mm.
be definitely interesting to reflect and explore some of those and see why do we still hang on to some of those traditions. And even though it's changed so much, what do we gain from this now, right? What is the
Mm.
value of Christmas, and what or how we want to utilize it so it's for our benefit and not just as a you know commercial opportunity or so on.
Absolutely. And I think that the that kind of choice to reflect on our traditions is can be a really powerful one, because we often engage in tradition and have no idea why we're doing it. We just do it because tradition. And choosing to actually look at what the tradition does for us gives it the meaning. And that will be different for each person, because we also each have different traditions around Hanukkah, Christmas, and various winter holidays and festivities. And so, yeah, there's certain things that will connect us. So even food, I think food is such an important one, and it's something that can be so visceral in terms of how it connects us to the past and to people that might be present or absent, and to ancestry as well. So kind of to what is part of your ancestry in terms of what was available on the land, and what was kind of seen as celebratory feasting food at the times that these traditions were coming about, and how that's developed over time. And what that really does, if we kind of take a step back, is investigating all of these things really helps to connect us with others. So, with a long lineage in the past, but also thinking about how traditions and these things will take us into the future, but also how it will connect us with people in different spaces and places,
Yeah.
and that there's being partaking all in this ritual that has gone on for many years is something that reminds us that we are part of a much wider and bigger human race and a much wider and bigger
Yeah,
community.
and this is something that people don't do anymore. But Christmas time has been used in olden days as a very ritualistic kind of fortune telling opportunity, and it's been seen as a gateway of communication between kind of this world and the other world. The world of spirits, the world of ghosts, and so on. So
Mm.
people use those opportunities to kind of find the hope. And a lot of those rituals were also involving food, and there were a lot of rituals that, the way you pour food over the table, the way you lay things will predict your fortunes in the coming year, right? The way, they would put straw underneath the tablecloth, for example. And this is something that my grandparents used to do for as long as they were alive. And even though that is kind of a symbolic gesture for the kind of the bed of the hay straw where baby Jesus was born, but it actually it goes so much further back to all of the pagan times in terms of how we utilize some of these nature as our food and as our way of making our beds and our homes and our connection with the nature. And there's been a lot of kind of superstitious beliefs of, people would be pulling the straw from the tablecloth, and whoever pulls the longest one, that's going to be the person who lives the longest. And there's a lot of these beliefs that were believed that, some other signs from the other world are being sent to us to tell our fortunes. So it's definitely very interesting to reflect on, why people hold on to some of those rituals and traditions, and especially at the time of uncertainty, at the time of change. Some of those traditions can give us sense of hope, and can also give us that sense of purpose, something to believe in, something to hope for, believing that, regardless how difficult things are, things can get better. And it's and also having that sense of connecting with something that is bigger than us, that I'm not here struggling on my own. Actually, I have support, and that support is coming from the connection of people with whom you're sharing that table, and sharing your meals. But also there's that sense of connecting with the bigger world and the universe, and being able to talk to animals and being able to talk to spirits that night. So there is definitely this kind of injection of new rebirth and new hope and so on. And that's really the true meaning of Christmas, right?
Mm.
And being able to kind of connect to ourselves, to everything that is bigger than us, and our place on earth here.
Absolutely. And something that really facilitates that as well is this slowing down. So people slow down over Christmas. Often it comes as a knock-on effect in work of lots of people being away or having time off, or, uh, coming up to the end of a quarter at the end of December, and that it's that slowing down, and that really kind of helps to facilitate that reflection, that allows you to connect to bigger pictures and engage in these superstitions, which I think is so
Yeah.
wonderful. We can have in our kind of very hyper scientific era, and I love science, I'm not
Yeah.
anti-science, but
But
I also
even still now, there is still that sense of believe in magic, right? And,
yeah,
telling
Santa,
children about Santa and all of the
yeah.
magic that we can create. It's still part of the same superstition that is presented differently, right? But
Mm,
definitely there is a magic, right? But magic is
absolutely.
not, um, yeah, it's not something external. Magic is what we create. Magic is what we
Yeah.
make out of those daily moments in our daily lives, those little sparkles and those little connections with
Mm,
other people, with other things, with nature, those little insights that we can gain from reflecting on our past, from building our future vision, and so on. That's
mm.
really the magic, is in the present moment, and in some of those connections that we are able to make to ourselves, to other people, and to the bigger world around us. Yeah.
Definitely. And Christmas is that time that kind of reignites our relationship with that gaze. I think kind of being able to see magic in the world is about having a magical gaze.
Mm.
So looking for it, looking for the magic in certain things. I mean, even just down to noticing and a lot of this connected to mindfulness too, in terms of like noticing the detail in nature, even just looking at frost when it's frosty.
Yeah.
But looking at kind of the
Sense of wonder in little things, right?
yeah,
And as you were talking before about this kind of slowing down that is so much in sync with nature as well. Like, nature really is in that kind of deep slumber this time
yeah,
of the year, and everything slows down. And actually our metabolic processes are very much in sync with that. So we are not as productive as we sometimes would want to be, right? But there is a reason for that, that our body requires these kind of cycles and rhythms to do its own thing. And only when we slow down from doing that, we can truly tune in inwards, and we can see that magic which is not visible when we are lost in this kind of busyness of everyday
Mm.
hustle and bustle.
Definitely. And tuning into that magic, I think, is so important as a regular practice because it helps us. It's a really amazing coping mechanism as well. Just thinking about being able to see the beauty and the magic in the world can give so much joy, and also remind you of the power of your imagination, and what that can do for you, that you're so much more autonomous over the things that you see and experience than often we think we are. And engaging in superstitions. And you don't have to come at everything with a critical belief. We're not analyzing superstitions on a scientific basis. No one's proposing it as the next big theory of the world. It's a tool for engaging our imagination and looking at things differently and noticing patterns that we otherwise wouldn't notice, or
Yeah.
forces that we otherwise wouldn't
Yeah.
notice.
Creating
Looking
those new what if scenarios, right? What if this was possible? And allowing our imagination to go wild and free, and entertain kids with all of the
yeah.
Santa stories and so on. But isn't it wonderful to engage in that process ourselves? And when we start to engage in this creative thinking, there are different parts of our brain that are being engaged that are never activated through this kind of real life actions, and this kind of realistic decision making process. So there is a lot of value in activating some of those processes that can reignite hope and trust and happiness and new possibilities for what we are able to create in our real lives, and how we can overcome obstacles differently. So it's
Mm,
really kind of this time to reflect before the new year, when we can then kind of set these new goals and new objectives and new year's
mm.
resolutions and so on.
Definitely, definitely, and engaging in the way that we can sort of have power over our experience by performing the stories that we tell ourselves. So we, if depending on what stories we're telling ourselves and how we perform those, that really affects our lives and our behaviors and our perspective on the world. And recognizing that we do have autonomy over that. We tell
Yeah.
kids about Father Christmas. And whether you choose to do that or not is up to you. But there's also different ways that you can do that. You don't have to put it forward as factual. You can put it forward as a story. This is this beautiful and amazing story that we are all now engaging in the collective performance of. And that's magical. That's where the magic is. And I think that that's an important message to take away into the rest of our lives as well. Like you say, going into January, making new resolutions. If you decide, this is the story that I'm going to live now, and now I'm going to perform that story, that helps with being able to form a narrative really, really, and see a clear vision and a clear picture, an arc of our story. Really helps us actually go through it and actually perform those behaviors and those habits.
Absolutely. And as you know, that, most New Year's resolutions fail. And the reason why they fail is because they're not congruent with our inner values and belief systems, right?
Mm,
We want something at the cognitive level,
indeed.
but, our subconscious brain and body has different kind of needs, different kind of goals, and we end up fighting our own subconscious map of the world with this kind of rational brain that says you have to look specific way, you have to behave specific way, and we end up fighting ourselves and internally. So definitely, I think, to kind of to summarize it here, and we would love to invite you to take this time to really reflect on the magic of everyday moments, and what are the stories that we are telling ourselves about us, about the world, about other people, about possibilities, and what would be the new narratives that we need to be developing for ourselves, so that we can go into that new year and that new time with seeing the world with a new eyes, right?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that's a wonderful message to leave on, and yeah, engage in that reflection, look at those stories, and see the power in that too.
Right, wonderful. So we wish you a lot of magic and a lot of magical moments in your everyday lives, and make the most of this time to reflect, to let go of things that doesn't serve you, and build things that can take you to a better place in the future. So thank you and Merry
Absolutely.
Christmas.
Happy holidays.
Bye then.